Maliketh the Black Blade is by far my favorite Elden Ring boss. So in this video I will be showing you how to avoid all his attacks and be able to defeat him with any build of your choice. To showcase this effectively, I will be using a range of under-leveled weapons to keep the fight going for longer, and to also show the differences between slow, medium, and fast-hitting weapons. I'll also use a shield strategy in Phase 1, while also throwing in a few spells to show their openings if you're using a casting build. I've used these talismans to increase casting speed with Radagon's icon, and everything else was just for stamina increase and regeneration. No consumable buffs will be used in this showcase. One tool I will be using is the Blasphemous Claw, which allows you to parry some of Maliketh's attacks. This item is located in the opposite direction of Maliketh's fog wall, and it's obtained after defeating Recusant Bernal. The build I am using is pretty rubbish, again to keep damage low and so the fight would last longer. This fight is also done with medium load as it's the most commonly used, but light load would make dodging easier. Before we start, I will pause and slow down the video regularly so I can narrate the key moments to dodge and attack. Once the fight is over, I'll cover off any other moves that weren't captured in this battle. So, let's begin. The boulder throw, just dodge in any direction. If he picks up small rocks afterwards, dodge when his hand is under his shoulder. Now when he slams his claw into the ground, there are two possible attacks. One where he lifts straight up, causing an AoE attack. The other, he will charge forth a bit, then unleash an attack. Which attack is totally dependent on the player's positioning, but because of my distance, I know it will be the charge attack. To avoid it, jump the moment you see sparks on the ground. For the moving rock throw, once the rock collecting sound cue ends or when the sparks animation stops, dodge in any direction. If using a shield, like I am now, this entire flurry of attacks can just be blocked, and the final slam down hit allows for a great opening into a guard counter-attack. For this quick bestial sling, dodge the moment the sound cue ends. This can be tricky. Dodge forward or backwards the moment he raises his blade. But if you are positioned under him more, it may not be successful. Again for this move, dodge at the end of the sound cue or at the end of the spark animation. This is the claw slam attack again. Only up close this time. Just dodge diagonally to the right once he begins to raise his claw out of the ground. Pause for a moment and jump to dodge the AoE. This allows you to follow up with a jump attack. If you are able to break his stance, move towards his head to perform a riposte. He'll then stagger, allowing a range of follow-up attacks. I've put away the shield, so we need to dodge this flurry of dagger attacks now. When his arm is up in the air like this, move slightly to the right, then dodge. Immediately after this, dodge to the left. Now he won't always do this attack next. Sometimes he'll slam the dagger into the ground. Either way, there is a pause for both. For this attack, just Dodge right again. When he goes to slam his dagger into the ground, you just want to move backwards, as the dagger will not hit you, leaving him open to a barrage of possible attacks. Each time you dodge this move, it will often leave him open for a casting attack. The dagger thrust attack has an almost identical pattern to the previous combo, which involves dodging to the right, then to the left. Right again, then moving backwards when he performs the dagger slam. When he puts the dagger in his mouth and raises both claws, move back. Then focus on the ground to find an area without rubble. Once you have found a spot, either wait it out or do a cast attack. I'll shut up now until phase 2, as I have already covered the remaining attacks of this fight. Now, before we continue, we're going to swap footage for a moment. One thing you should try and avoid in phase 1 is finishing him off with a riposte, as this will result in you spawning into phase 2 at your last location, rather than at the center of the room. I only suggest this as it can be disorienting. So if you get his health near 50%, and you do get a stance break, just don't riposte, and you will avoid this entirely. This is different footage again, but the most important thing to learn when fighting Maliketh is try and break the habit of dodging backwards. The attack you are about to see, which is one of the hardest to dodge, can almost always be entirely avoided if you dodge directly into him. So with this in mind, let's get back to our main footage. At the start of phase 2, you'll have time to consume a flask or do a cast attack. Then once he jumps in the air, walk in a diagonal direction and dodge diagonally when he puts his feet on the ground. If you did the previous dodge correctly, he will almost always follow up with this sidestep, blade swing attack. To avoid this attack, dodge forward. You'll then be directly under him and be in a position to do a huge majority of weapon attacks, including fully charged attacks and most Ashes of War. Ripostes are pretty much the same. Move towards the head, and then you'll have an opening for many attacks afterwards. Maliketh will do one of 2 moves when on the pillar. Jump away with a projectile sword attack, or jump towards you slamming his sword into the ground. In this instance, he is going to jump away. Dodge the moment you see him finish his sword swing. This will also leave him open to a cast attack. Again, dodge forward for any of these slow sword attacks. If he moves his sword behind his head like this, wait for the growl sound cue to end, or for the moment when he starts to move forward. Then just dodge forward twice to avoid both hits. This will also give you a short opening to attack. Another one, dodge forward and try an attack. If he follows up with this next move, dodge forward again the moment he moves his sword down. He's sidestepping again, dodge forward, then use a powerful attack. As you can see, I can't see shit, and I'm about to fuck up entirely by doing exactly what I told you not to do. I panic dodged backwards. Let's see what happens. Like I said, this move generally only ever occurs if you roll backwards. So stick with rolling forward, and you won't have to deal with this like I just did. For this jump projectile attack, dodge the moment you see the projectile. This should work at any distance. This is the exact moment you want to use the Blasphemous Claw to parry his attack. Fortunately, the parry window for this item has a decent AoE, so timing doesn't always have to be precise. The only attacks that can be parried for Maliketh are the ones where his sword glows gold. I generally store this item on my downward, directional quick pouch, but you can place it anywhere you're most comfortable. If you've successfully landed the parry, you then want to run underneath him, and he'll be open to a range of brutal attacks. For these aerial projectile attacks, you want to dodge when you hear the sound cue. I got some really good RNG on this Maliketh battle, so now I am going to cover off all the moves that he didn't use. This is a move from Phase 1, which I blocked with a shield. When he does this sidestep, you want to wait a moment, then dodge when you see him lunge the dagger towards you. This is probably one of the most difficult moves I see people struggle with. For this part, dodge backwards when he ends the rotation of this attack. Then, you want to start moving backwards. The moment he forces his sword into the ground, dodge backwards again to avoid the AoE. For this move, where he jumps onto his sword, dodge forward diagonally before he hits the ground. Then, when he starts to bend his knees, dodge to avoid the explosion attack. For this move again, if you don't want to parry him, dodge just before the sword hits the ground, then dodge again immediately afterwards. And this is identical to the aerial projectile attack. Dodge just before the sword hits the ground, then dodge immediately afterwards. He does have another aerial projectile attack that occurs when you're further away. He, however, does 3 projectiles with this attack. Dodging is the same. Just dodge when you hear the projectile sound. Then after the 3rd projectile, when his sword glows gold, parry with the Blasphemous Claw. And again, if you don't want to parry, just roll forward at the same moment when you see the sword glows gold. For his roar attack, I wouldn't stress too much. It does no damage, and as long as you quickly recover and dodge into the next attack, you should be fine. But if you do want to avoid it, try and move back away from him, and then dodge right before he lets out the roar. So that's all of Maliketh's moves, hopefully. I haven't missed anything. Now, in this section I won't be narrating. Rather, this is a showcase that focuses strongly on cast attacks. This is just the build I will be using, and hopefully the raw footage shows all the possible openings, if this is your preferred play style.
Thou approacheth destined death. I will not have it stolen from me again.
Lastly, this is a showcase for those who want an additional challenge. Here we are using a level 1 character, aka RL1. If you have no interest in this sort of shit, feel free to skip to the final chapter for my final comments.
Thou who approachest destined death, I will not have it stolen from me.
And that's pretty much everything. I really hope you have found this guide helpful in some way. Please keep in mind there are many other ways to avoid and take on Maliketh's attacks. What I have shown is just what I found the most simple and reliable. So best of luck, and thanks for watching.